Hey folks, Eric Prey, Focus Fishing Guide Service. Got another video fishing report for you for Table Rock. It is Tuesday, January 22nd. Sorry we didn't get a report last week. I was out of town for 3 or 4 days. Managed to get on the water a little bit last week, but between the weather and traveling and whatnot, wasn't on the water much last week. Week before, did manage to make it out with Phil Stone for a trip and a couple other buddies. We went out and fished a little bit. I tell you, it's changed quite a bit between the amount of rain and the colder temperatures and the amount of water they're running. It's really kind of changed the bite a little bit. Still catching fish. Was out there over the weekend before it turned real nasty, and I guess Friday before it turned real nasty. But it's actually, the bite is not as good as it was, but it's still there. We're still catching fish. You just got to work a little bit harder for them. As far as our water temperature, where I fished on Friday, we were still looking mid to upper 40s. Not 48, 49 like we had before, but we're looking 45 to 47. Even saw as low as about 44. So the water temperature's definitely cooled down. This cooler rain, and it's raining again outside right now. That's why we're doing this inside my office. It's definitely, we had the cooler rain, we've had the cooler nights, we had a couple of real bitter cold nights. We got a roller coaster of temperatures coming for the next 3 or 4 days. It was supposed to get up in the upper 40s today. I just looked at it, it's like 41 or 42 here in Springfield. So, and this rain's not going to be a real warm rain, so it's not going to really warm the water up. Thankfully, it doesn't look like we're going to get a lot of rain. They're saying anywhere from 1/10 to maybe a ½ inch, but probably closer to 1/10 and a ¼ inch, so it's not really going to affect the lake level that much. But the water temperature has cooled off, and it has changed the bites. We are catching fish a little bit different. The bigger story as far as our deep bite is they are still running current. And it's basically been 4 units non-stop for the last 8-10 days. They did slow it down a little bit yesterday. Actually shut the generators off for a couple hours yesterday, about mid to late afternoon. But then I think by 8 o'clock last night, boom, they had all 4 of them back on. So running a lot of current, moving a lot of bait, and scattering the fish. That's the big story. When they move that much current, it's really going to scatter the fish. The lake level itself is pretty much right at 916, so we're about a foot high. I don't see them dropping it. I don't see them shutting off the water anytime soon because they need to drop it. They need to get it back down to 915. Beaver's just a little bit high. Bull Shoals 2 to 3 feet high, and they've got generators running on all 3 lakes in the chain, so they're trying to get that water level down. This rain today probably won't amount to much. It probably won't affect the lake level that much, but they're still going to be running current at least for the next few days to try to get that lake level back down where it needs to be, back around 915, which is our normal winter pool. But if you guys are coming down, say you're going to fish the lower end of the lake, that's where I spent last week. On Friday we went out, we fished the lower end, tried to do a couple of different bites. Since I'm not getting out as much with the boat situation and with the weather, and it's just a slow time of year, so we don't get on the water 5, 6, 7 days a week like we normally do in the summertime or the springtime. This time of year we usually get on the water 2 or 3 days. With my boat situation, it's been more like 1 or 2 days, so it's a little bit tougher. We try to cover either a lot of area or we try to cover a lot of patterns, and tried to cover some patterns on Friday. The deep bite is still there on either the Jewel Scuba Spoon or the Rapala Jigging Rap. Both of those were working. But again, with all this current, it's got the shad stretched out. You'll actually see them on your graph. Number one, they're going to be deeper than you think they're going to be. Most of the shad we're seeing are in that 50 to 70 foot range. And they're going to be scattered and stretched out. You're not going to have the great big massive balls of shad. Every once in a while you'll stumble on one, and if you stumble on a great big massive ball of shad, fish the heck out of it even if you don't see fish, because the fish will be around it. But for the most part, the shad are going to be broken up and they're going to be scattered, and what that causes is the fish to be scattered. You can still catch them deep, most of them 50 to 60 foot deep, and that's kind of what we found when we were out last week. 50, 60, about as deep as 70. But they're scattered. You don't find the groups of fish. You can find every once in a while you'll get onto a good school, and you can find 20 to 30 fish in a school, and you can catch those fish pretty quick. But for the most part, you're going to find scattered groups of fish, catching them on the scuba spoon and catching them on the jigging Rap, working it through those scattered schools of shad. And again, 50 to 70 foot deep was the best depth for us last week doing that. The other bite we tried while we were down there, we really wanted to catch them on a stick bait. Throwing the Mega Bass Vision 110 and throwing the Spromic stick. Did manage to catch a few. Seemed like that bite was a little bit later in the day, a little bit warmer, had some good wind, really pushed those fish up a lot shallower than I normally would expect them. But with that much wind, and with the water warming up a little bit, the air temperature warming up, fish, and it clouded up, and the fish really moved shallower. Most of the fish were on rocky banks, really more points than banks, and either main lake points or major secondaries. And what's a major secondary? If you have a creek that has arms that come off of it, obviously it's going to form those secondaries. Well, you always notice you got the arms towards the mouth of the creek or towards the back. The ones toward the mouth of the creek were a lot more productive. Most of the fish were in that, I'm going to say 10 to 15 foot range overall depth, suspended down about 5 to 6 feet, not really pausing the bait for a long time, just kind of giving it a couple of pops and letting it sit, moving it about every 3 to 5 seconds. Didn't catch a lot of fish, but did catch some better quality fish doing that. I'm going to Kimberling City, and definitely got some good bites going on in Kimberling City as well. I'm going to be honest, I haven't been up there since it's been about 2 weeks. But when we were there, the deep bite was still strong, even though they were running a lot of water. Most of the fish, though, were on main lake points or main lake humps versus being back in the trees like we've been catching them in the Kimberling City area. Most of them were fairly deep, 45 to 75 feet deep. Where these long gravel points roll off into the channel, or where you have a hump out there close to the channel, were our key spots doing that. Again, Jewel Scuba Spoon, Rapala Jig and Rap, looking for shad, or looking for anything on those main lake points and humps. Anything being a rock pile, a little bit of brush, a tree, an isolated tree or something. If you could find something that would hold the fish, you'd do a lot better, even if the shad weren't present. Most of them glued to the bottom. You got to drop the bait all the way down and work it, and you'll get one to come up. Unlike when they're schooled up real good, when you get one hooked, the bottom explodes. This time of year, you'll get one hooked and you see 2 or 3 fish coming up. You're not going to see a big group of them. But if you find shad out on those main lake points and main lake humps, definitely fish those. Did very well with a stick bait up there. That's kind of why we threw it so much down on the lower end. Had a real good stick bait day. They're in the Kimberling City area, mostly on major secondary points. The points closest, secondaries closest to the mouths of the creeks. Flatter points were a little bit better than the steeper points, but you still had to have rock, and you still had to have some isolated timber to get bit. Throwing both the Mega Bass Vision 110 and the Spromic stick out a little bit deeper. Fish seem to be between that 12 and 20 foot range, suspended down 7 to 10 feet. Did catch a few on the main lake, but really the better bite was on some of those windy, flat rock points. There's a lot of those in Kimberling City that you can find that are, they've got rock on them, and they've got pretty good size rock on them, but they're fairly flat. That really was key for us to catch them on a stick bait up there. And they did catch a few on a jig, fishing it around boat docks, but really didn't work that pattern over real hard. Really wanted to catch them on either deep or on a stick bait. I know I can catch them on a jig pretty much 12 months out of the year using the Jewel Pro Spider jig, 5/16 or 7/16, Okeechobee Blue, Green Pumpkin Candy, the colors I like to throw, matched up with a speed craw or matched up with a beaver, working really good around boat docks, shady boat docks. Just work the shade over guys and work the deeper end of the boat docks, and some of the bigger docks seem to be producing better than the smaller, 4, 6 stall docks. You're looking for those 10, 12, 14 stall docks or 20 stall docks. Those really seem to be holding a lot more fish than the smaller docks are right now. Go up into the James. James has got a really strong stickbait bite. Was up there the other day, or the other trip I did last week was more towards the beginning of the week, before I went out of town. and the stickbait bite up there seemed to be a lot more, I guess, developed. A lot more stickbait fish. Again, the Spromic stick and the Megabass Vision 110. Again, on those windy, flatter, rocky banks with a little bit of cover on them, whether it be a brush pile or be a tree or just some bigger rock mixed in, really did better. Not flat gravel, but flatter banks that have got rock on them, that have got wind blowing on them, were really key for us up there. Fish, again, probably that 10 to 15, 10 to 20 foot range, had the boat in about 25 to 30, and most of the fish came about halfway back to the boat. Most of them were suspended, I would say probably 6 to 10 foot down. Didn't do any better with one bait over the other. So whether if you like throwing the mixed stick, throw the mixed stick. If you like throwing the Megabass, throw the Megabass. But we didn't do better with any one over another. Blue Bandit on the Megabass, or on the mixed stick, was a really good color, and so was Norman Flake. That LG Bone on the Megabass was a really good color. So it really didn't seem to matter. We caught them good on a stick bait. Threw a crankbait when we were up there a little bit as well, because at that time the water was low to mid 40s. I think it was 43, and we saw as warm as about 46. Of course, that's been over a week ago. But we did catch them on a wigglewort, caught a few on a rock crawler, and caught a few on a Curve 55 on those steeper junk rock banks with wind blowing on them. But I kind of had the feeling that bite might be going away, especially with the water cooling off. Didn't feel like, you know, just you get a feeling for whether or not the fish are going to bite it, and we fished it for an hour or so and caught a couple. It just felt like that wasn't where the fish were. Felt like they backed off and they were suspended more, so we went and threw a stick bait. And you can still catch them on a jig up there, just like the rest of the lake. You can always catch them on a Jewel Pro Spider jig, 5/16, 7/16, and you guys know the colors. And working those rocky banks and working it out to about 15, 18 foot deep. You get a flat, calm day, especially if it's sunny, you're better off throwing a jig than you are a stick bait or a crankbait right now up the James. Go up into the White River, and the White's been a little bit different. Still a good deep bite up the White. It seems like if they're not running a lot of current out of Beaver, the deep bite's a little bit better up the White than it is elsewhere on the lake, and you don't really have to go that far up. You know, Shell Knob to maybe Big M. The deep bite seems a little bit stronger when they're not running current out of Beaver. If they're running current out of Beaver, it does seem to knock that deep bite down a little bit more. Do tend to see better schools of shad, and in turn better schools of fish up there if they're not running water in Beaver. So you might, you know, kind of look at your app or look online and see if they're running water in Beaver if you're going to go out there. Most of the fish we caught up that way were on the main lake again, not necessarily back in the creeks, not in the trees, on those long run out points, and dang near right where it dropped into the channel. I mean, if you didn't have a significant drop where it went from, say, 50 to 70, we couldn't get bit. Still catching them on the Jewel Scuba Spoon, still catching them on the Rapala Jigging Rap, but we really need to be basically way out there in the middle of the lake like we were broke down, as far off the bank as you can imagine on these long gravel points to where it drops off in the channel. Most of those fish out there were spotted bass every once in a while, and they were related to the bottom. But every once in a while you'd see one up off of the bottom in, say, 25 or 30 foot of water. Those tended to be either largemouth or smallmouth. So if you do see those single fish suspended out there, make sure you work those fish over, because those tend to be better fish too. You'll get into a school of spots, and you know, they're, for the most part, are going to be about the same size, but every once in a while you'll stumble upon a big smallmouth or a big largemouth suspended up above the spots that are on the bottom. Stick bait bite was decent up there. Didn't really throw it a lot over up there, so I have a feeling it's going to get a lot better since this water's cooling off, and with the amount of currents. You know, they weren't running water out of Beaver when we were up there, so we really wanted to key on deep fish, so we fished deep. If they'd been running water, if we had a little bit more wind, probably would have been throwing the stick bait a lot more, both the Megabass Vision 110 and the Spromic stick. Again, I'm sure the bite is going to be the same as it is all over. You're looking for points, either main lake or that first secondary point inside the creek that's got some rock on it. Maybe a little bit flatter if you got wind blowing on it. If you don't have wind blowing on it, it's got to have some timber or something to hold those fish, because they won't stay up on it unless there's bait up there, and the wind will blow the plankton and in turn blow the bait up there. So you definitely find those flatter rocky points and you'll do pretty good with a stick bait. And we did okay with a jig, but again, you know, we went up there to fish deep, so I didn't do a lot of jig fishing up there. Did catch a few around the Shell Knob boat ramp area. You guys know there's a lot of docks around there, and those docks always seem to hold fish. We caught quite a few, well, I won't say quite a few, we caught a few around those docks with a 5/16 Jewel Pro Spider jig. We threw an Okeechobee Blue up there with a beaver on it because it was kind of a sunny, calm day. Didn't have a lot of wind, didn't have cloud cover, kind of post frontal. So we're throwing it with a beaver around those docks and hitting the shade and working it all the way out. You know, trying to work it out 15, 20, even 25 foot deep to get bit. And did catch a couple smallmouth doing that. So it's worth having a jig tied on if you're going to go up the White, weather permitting. Guys, it is 3/4 of the way through January. Weather sucks. It's cold. It's rainy today. It's supposed to be cold all weekend. Like I said earlier, we kind of got a roller coaster going this week. We're supposed to be 40 today and low 30s tomorrow, mid 30s. Am planning on fishing a couple times towards the end of this week. I know Phil and I are going to try to get out and keep working on this deep fishing video. We got some decent video, but our audio wasn't very good, so we're going to have to reshoot some of that. But you can definitely get out and get some more information for you guys, try to keep you guys up to date. If you do get a chance to go fishing, I think Sunday is supposed to be in the 40s, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of guys on the water on Sunday. But guys, we are still running winter rates right now. Going to run those all the way through February. The weather's going to break. If you guys want to go fishing, want to hire a guide, give me a call. It's Focus Fishing Guide Service. You can reach me at 417-860-4743. Hit my website, focusfishing.com. Shoot me an email, book online, however you want to get a hold of me. Get a hold of me. We'll get out there. We'll catch some fish. We'll have a good time. Guys, please take a minute to subscribe if you haven't done that. But thanks for watching. Can't wait to hear from you. We'll see you on the water.